So we're going to change the slides to this session with Jeff Strohl and Roy Swift. And I don't know if this is me doing this. Might be. There we are. It's Jeff Strohl and Roy Swift, stalwarts in the field. And I want to tell you, they don't know anything about, I decided I wasn't going to share this with them because they're used to dealing with change, and I thought, let's see how they do as they're retiring, dealing with a whole new agenda that we didn't share with them.
This would be very spontaneous.
So, and apologies in advance for this. So what we're going to do is capture some key perspectives from our stalwarts about what's been going and growing in our fields. And honestly, I've known you both for almost 20 years from my years at Lumina, where I was the first program officer for both the Center for Education in the Workforce and for WorkCred. I was really there at the birthing and I recall many sessions of growth and change in the organizations. What people don't know is it looks on the outside, particularly now for those of you who don't know the history, that somehow they just fell into place and everything was fine. These organizations do not just fall right into place. There was a lot of growth and angst and development and hard work developing what they are today, and there's a lot of respect that goes with anybody that grows entities like you have both helped to grow. So what we're going to do this morning is call on another new change in all of our lives, AI, to call on AI skills to draw a skill that I don't possess. I wish I did. And when I say draw, I'm meaning drawing cartoons. So bear with me. Jeff, here you are at the Ecosystem Board, expressing this sentiment you may have. I've been trying to help folks navigate for years, but the maps keep getting more complicated. And here you are, Roy, grabbing your beach towel and handing a large stack of glossary terms about industry certifications to AI, telling it, here, you do it now, I'm heading for the beach. I don't know if you're heading for the beach, but the proverbial beach. Sorry, I have to multitask here. And here you are, both retirement bound, not looking unhappy about it, by the way, with AI trying to assure you both we'll try to keep up. So that's what we're thinking. There's going to be a lot of keeping up, and we know that AI is going to be with us. That's kind of the new way we're all going to have to do work. So we want to hear from you about what's been important, truly important, that we need to be thinking about as we move forward. And the best way we came up with to collect your thoughts is through an interview, specifically the Colbert NCRN questionnaire. So I hope those of you who are night owls like I am, and I like to watch late night talk shows, know about the Colbert questionnaire that host Stephen Colbert administers to the celebrities and the thought leaders who visit his show. Some of you may have seen the last person to take the Colbert questionnaire just last week was President Obama. And many of you know that tomorrow will be Colbert's last show before he leaves the CBS airwaves. So this is very timely to administer this new questionnaire that we made up for you. So we're going to be asking you some questions from the Colbert questionnaire, and we've added some NCRN questions to the list. And apologies in advance for not sharing this with you, but again, we wanted you to try to deal with change because that's what we all do. So let's get into the Colbert questions first. And I don't need to change the slides for this. So, Jeff, what do you think is the best sandwich?
Halloumi with tomato.
Okay, Roy, it's your turn. What is the best sandwich?
Cheesesteak.
And use your microphones for this so we get this on record.
Cheesesteak.
Okay, so Jeff, what's one thing you own that you really should throw out?
A lot of dirty T-shirts.
But none of your Hawaiian shirts, right?
No.
Roy, what about you? What should you really throw out?
Volunteering for everything and not being able to say no.
What
is the scariest animal? Jeff, you go first.
A centipede. My wife was in Africa, and a 2-foot centipede went up the leg of her pantsuit, and someone came over and told her to dance, and she watched this centipede go away.
Oh.
Freaked me out to no end.
Wow, yeah. Okay. Roy, what?
I just came from Africa, and hyenas.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, Jeff, apples or oranges?
Both.
How about you?
Oranges. I want that more vitamin C.
Okay, that's your healthcare side.
Right.
Right. So, Jeff, what is the most used app on your phone?
I should say something work-oriented, but chess.
Interesting. Okay. How about you, Roy?
I don't know.
What do you use most on your phone?
I look at the app for. No, I hardly use apps.
You don't text all the time?
Oh, I text. If you
Is
consider
that
if
an
you
app?
consider that an
It's
app,
text-
certainly.
okay. The audience is
texting
confirming that texting is an app.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so those are the Colbert side of the questions that I felt were appropriate to ask you. So now let's move to the NCRN portion of the questionnaire. Jeff, what's the best report you ever put out and why?
My favorite report is Separate and Unequal, which looks at socioeconomic biases in post-secondary goingness and labor market outcomes. I think it was extremely important because it was one of many, but I think it was a real premier piece in a series I worked with Tony Carnevale, our founding director of the center, that really establishes that we can't fall back on eugenics to explain differences in outcomes, and we firmly establish in this report how different outcomes are controlling for college readiness. And I think that is a foundational piece of what the center stands for, is that we are not a meritocracy, and we need to be so.
Actually, I just finished this book by former Senator Ben Sasse called The Vanishing American Adult, which I really have decided that he's onto something and that we need to further validate and look at, but he makes the distinction between schooling and education. Well, what is schooling doing? And the reason he's talking about vanishing adult, he believes our current schooling is extending adolescence almost into the 30s, and that we are not looking at the adult type of skills in the work thing that you were talking about. And frankly, it also then points out of how we're delivering knowledge, that we are putting students passively. We are not demanding our students become self-directed learners to be active in this regard. So there's a lot there in regard to looking at research of how we change something like that.
So what's the best report you ever put out? I love
I'll
this.
tell you,
You're a perfect
actually,
politician. You will answer the question.
No. I will say it has to do with you at Illumina, when we were working with APLU and UPSEA and WorkCred. One of the best reports and the best interaction of trying to bring certifications, higher ed, and we had the support of the presidents, because that was one of the criteria, that the presidents of the universities had to say this is an important thing, and then we had them hosting this regard. I remember the president at the time of San Jose State University. She was going to stay for a half hour and just welcome us in the IT world there, the Silicon Valley. She stayed for 2 hours because she thought that we were on to something in this regard. And so I think that was the most impactful study that I was involved in when I was at WorkCred.
Right. So, Jeff, if you had to be known for one project to represent your long career, what do you think it would be?
That's a hard one. I've actually had probably 3 careers. I was in construction for about 10 years. I was in evaluation work for another 5 or 10 years, and then the center. So I would say, as a single report, the Separate and Unequal, but as a project, the Center on Education and Workforce is something I'm quite proud of, because we were quite innovative in the early period on trying to bring education and labor market research together in a way that it had not been done. Holly was prescient early on and said, you're not going to keep that advantage, so keep on your toes. And it's true that if you look around, there are now more than one center on education in the workforce. Variance, but the idea is there. And so in that work, just really establishing the need for education to think about labor markets and labor markets to think about education. For those of you who are really geeky, if you take a look at a human capital regression, we're basically at a point in history where education explains only about 30 to 50% of the earnings phenomenon. And so we're giving too much credit and too much blame to both programs and institutions, and we're ignoring things like occupational segregation. We're ignoring luck and contacts and everything else that happens in the labor market. And so us thinking about that, we're still not fully there. It's not. I was just speaking to the SHIOs have just started a very innovative group called the Economic and Workforce Development Officers Group. They're finally bringing the two sides together, and I'm just really, really excited that that conversation is going to continue.
Does that mean you don't want to retire because it's so exciting?
Yeah.
What's that again?
Does that mean you don't really want to retire because it's so exciting?
No, I want to retire.
I'm just testing your resolve here.
No, as one of my staff said, goodbye tension, hello pension.
Okay, so Roy, if you had to be known for one project to represent your career, what would it be?
Well, I've had 3 careers also. I was in the Army Medical Department in the Army Surgeon General's office, head of rehabilitation for the Army worldwide, and certainly looking at soldiers and the credentialing issues that we uniquely had in the military that sometimes is recognized and sometimes is not. We produce these combat medics that have the skills, and, we give a lot of thing about, we're going to look at skills. But unfortunately, the powers to be will say, oh no, but we have a lockstep process for you to become credentialed in this occupation, and particularly in healthcare. It is an accredited academic, not just any degree, you have to have an accredited degree, and then you have to have an accredited internship, and then you have to take a national certification exam, and then sometimes that national certification exam is the basis for being licensed. The state doesn't do anything with it. They just administratively take the money, and they rely on the national certification, which is one of the problems of the systems. I believe, I'm going to expand here a little, but I want to get this in. I think we're really lacking systems thinking in our area. We have got to look more about how the interaction of the various systems. And guess who controls the occupations more or less? The professional societies. And do we have professional societies in the room today? Well, we have one, IEEE, but but they're very unique. Coming from ANSI, they're one of our major partners, and we're very proud of IEEE. But wouldn't it be great if there was a spinoff, and I'm sure that the co-host could make this happen, is that ATD, I served on their committee for the BEST Awards. You would not believe the rigor that in corporate training and measuring outcomes, we could really learn from that group of people. The professional societies, they probably develop many more non-degree certificate programs than the academic world does. So we have got to bring this more together. And of course, I have my famous credentialing system that all of you know when I'm presenting, I always bring it up. But it's because I think we are very myopic in how we're looking at how credentials are created in this country. And we have got to have a broader systems thinking approach now that I've preached.
That's okay. We know you and love you. So, Jeff, what's one thing that you're glad that you don't have to do anymore in retirement?
There is no competition on this one. Fundraising. I love our funders in the field. They're easy to work with, but the whole landscape has changed. The center started on a 4-year funding cycles, and now things are down about 18 months to 2 years. Gates is going through another restructuring, and they're barely able to think beyond 1 year because of everything that's going on out there in the world, and it makes it tough. And so they're no longer really able in a position to take the kind of risks that foundations need to do on things that aren't sure bets out there in the world. And even Mackenzie Scott, who is my hero when it comes to blowing up the foundational giving space, is now their last round of giving, 70% went to people they already funded. They're making a big impact and they're wonderful, but there's the pushing the envelope, the blue sky funding is harder and harder to get, to come up with ideas that are experimental, that have a high likelihood of failure, not a high likelihood of success. So I'm happy not to be doing that anymore. Although I did just talk to my financial advisors, I have to do it for myself now. So.
I would like to pile on about that, actually.
Okay.
I do think these short-term grants is a real problem, foundations. Instead of 2 to 3 years, we need 3 to 5 years. We should really still be doing that study with APLU in a longitudinal study determining, because one of the things we don't know is we don't know the effectiveness of the integration of different types of credentials and the outcomes of this regard. And we have got to move there in that regard. And also, in my doctoral program in Wisconsin, I did what they call a distributed minor, and it was in systems thinking, and the other component of this was anthropology. Folks, we're talking about a cultural change of industry that needs cultural change. We have got to start looking at the theory and the practitioners and using anthropological kind. So I think that we need more funding on sociological and anthropological models where we actually go in. The survey and the data is great, but we need more. It's not only, but also phenomena. Data, surveys that give us the cream of the top of the cream, but we need to delve more deeper with these social and anthropological models to see what the culture it really is saying. Someone mentioned, we didn't mention much about faculty yesterday when things were coming up. They are absolutely the key factor in the higher education. If we don't have their hearts and minds, nothing is going to change, no matter how much the administration says that we need to be doing things like this. So I think, in our research and in our funding, we have to have a very different thinking for the future.
And I would just add, many of you know that my main work right now is developing the Learner Work Ecosystem Library and their flyers, so I hope you all pick a flyer up to know what we're doing. But one of the things that I noticed, because we enter initiatives, special projects that's one of the artifacts that we look for. My estimation is about 70 to 80% of the initiatives are all soft money, they're foundation funded. And if that's true, and I'm not sure it's true, but I'd like, someone should do research to see if it is true. If it's true, that does mean that some of the biggest innovation in the country is being held together by foundations, and foundations are only making 16 to 18 month grants, and then you don't know, they have, they change topics, et cetera, on a continuous basis. What kind of innovation development should be housed with foundation funding only? There's something serious in that. And at some point, that's another discussion. But I'm just going to, since we're talking about foundations, interesting that you're tapping out to retirement, but you're still fundraising.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jeff, what is one thing that you're going to miss the most in retirement?
There is a great pleasure in the community that exists here and people that you can talk to and really push the horizon on ideas and just sort of figure out what's next. And so I spent most of my career at Center on Education and the Workforce as Director of Research. So I had a really fun job where I sat around and scratched my chin, came up with good ideas that were successfully funded, and then have somebody else do the work. So I'm talking about really sweet. And so that ideation and where we are right now, we're always continuously up against the horizon. What's the next piece? What is what we don't understand? And so this this exploratory called NCRN has really started out not knowing what we didn't know, and it's taken us to a point where we don't know. We now know what we don't know, which sets out a fabulous work agenda in front of us. And so that thinking and thoughtfulness, and this is where I think that the foundation partners are very good partners, is help encouraging where that could be value and giving guidance about where an idea is, gee, that's cute, or gee, that could really be interesting. And I think we do need to have this community to help pressure test when ideas are, gee, that's interesting, but it's not very useful, versus that could actually go somewhere.
And nobody would know that when those first grants from Lumina to set up the center at Georgetown with Tony Carnevale, he said, could we set up the budget so maybe 1/3 of the funds are unmarked funds, so that it can, as timely research comes forward, we can jump on it and do a special report for Congress or for whoever. And we hadn't done that before, and I don't think that we did. Lumina has done that since, because our special project funding always had been marked, pretty much marked funds. And I thought at the time that was really interesting, and so did Jamie Marasotis. And so we gave that option to Georgetown. I think it really helped Georgetown be ready to put things out when it was timely. It's just something we don't think about.
It also helped us interact with the community, with the state stakeholders and local and other nonprofits, because we were able to do a lot of pro bono support work when it came to technical assistance on solving problems, and so it was very, very helpful. And I mean, we still continue doing it as much as we can. And so I think it was a great thing Lumina did. And
people don't know that you and Tony would make trips to go visit governors quietly and just explain to them things that they needed to know, but they didn't know who to ask in a safe environment. Who knows about how much of this is going on, that we need more of that activity so people can really get up to speed, and how people are going to fund that. Normally you don't put that in a grant proposal. And then on my side part gig, I'm going to go and help governors. We didn't even know which governors might need help, but I mean, that's so important. So what, Roy, what are you going to miss? What are you going to miss most?
It's about people, and there are 5 or 6 people in this audience. I'm reminded of the song, "People Who Need People Are the Luckiest People in the World." I could sing, but he wouldn't want it. But all of you know who you are in this room, who have had an impact on me and working, and it's about the relationships, and I think we could do more in this regard. We talk about a lot of good things happening in the various foundations, but we don't have one place where all the foundations come together and have people present their research. It's sort of like putting their light under the bushel basket, right? The little song you used to learn to sing in this regard. And so I think there is a real need to look at how we further develop these relationships with people and our various programs.
So here's the last question in this questionnaire. What is one piece of advice you would give up-and-coming researchers in this field? So, Jeff, you go.
This is a really good question. Know your audience. And so for our center, we don't talk to academics. And so for me, my motto is the smell test is more important than the t-test. You really have to think about how it is and what it is you're communicating to. You need to be extremely conscientious about your audience, who you're talking to. And I really think about communication as being an act between a transmitter and a receptor. And so the transmitter's got to be clear, but also has to be very conscientious about the way somebody receives the information. So if you look at what the center has done, if it's had any single mark in our field, it has been on clarity of communication. And we have developed a model where we have an embedded writer from day one in the beginning of the design architecture, so that the language that we're using is one that hopefully can communicate very widely and broadly. You need to think about cognitive overload. So if you have something and you've got a nice regression, and you're really excited about 6 decimal points, guess what? When you have 10 by 10 table with about 8 decimal decimal points, you're really presenting somebody with way too much information, and you're doing a very, very bad job about helping the audience focus on what point it is that you want them to have. We have to help the reader get to the information, so don't hide it. And so the last piece of information here is in the type of reports this community does, especially in the policy world. You're not writing the great American novel. Don't keep the findings a secret to the last paragraph. State them in the beginning, state them in the middle, state them in the end. Bring the audience along with the findings. Why are they important? Don't hide them. I mean, come on. You know, they save that for your first novel. But so that's about it.
I would say that I would like for you all to think more about what are quality assessments. How do we assess individuals, the outcomes? Too often at WorkCred and looking, ANSY's very involved with the manufacturing world and everything. Too often the employer says, they may have had it in school, but they come and they cannot demonstrate the skills. The Achilles heel of the non-credit arena, I believe, is weak assessments, not measuring whether learning really did occur or whether that skill was really developed. We have got to pay more attention to assessment. And that's where I think the certification community and the academic community and frankly the corporate training, because they're so measurement oriented within those corporate things, can work together on what does the assessment really measure what we want to measure in this regard. Often the assessment doesn't measure really what they wanted to measure in the first place. So we've got to pay more attention because we want less and less employers saying, well, they may have gotten it, but they're not coming and they cannot demonstrate their skills in this regard. And then the other thing that I want to think about, how many people have heard the words connections of value? We talk about credentials of value, connections of value. Evidently, I picked this up in LinkedIn from David Trotman, in Texas. But I gather that Gates and a few other people are talking about 50% of successful becoming a professor worker is whether the credential made the various connections for the student in internships, residencies, clerkships, and even civic citizen responsibility. That's something that the former senator talked about. We're not developing good citizens either, besides good workers. And I've often thought that there's no reason why the academic community cannot be looking at the communities surrounding their institutions as a learning and play even a 1 or 2 hour thing, like at a drugstore, a recreation center, at the police station, at the fire station, understanding what makes a community work and how workers vary in various industry kinds of things. We've got to start looking more innovatively about including community in the academic experience in this regard. We've got to break out of that box about this is good, this is the course, and then this is the objectives, and we've got to move beyond that.
So thank you. Well, that is the Colbert NCRN questionnaire. Thank you for taking it as a surprise. And we still have 15 minutes left, which is really great. And we don't necessarily have to take all 15 minutes. But what I wanted to tell you is that we wanted to hide the cartoons because we didn't want them to see the cartoons. So when you sign, if you did, at the document in the back, sign your autographs, your high school annual if you want, to wish best wishes to both Jeff and Roy, and you'll see the cartoons at the bottom if that's helpful to you. And I would say that I will comment that the library is going down this road, Jeff, based on what you just said about you can write really long research reports. Pretty much hardly anyone's going to read them anymore. And I've moved in my thinking to cartoons because I think it's really important to do try visual storytelling because things are getting more complicated. And for whatever reason, and I don't fully understand the dynamic, but when things are really complicated, sometimes a cartoon can explain it or a series of cartoons in ways that can't be done otherwise. So I'm sort of wanting to explore that. I think that a lot of us who are in this field doing work of all kinds should be thinking about multiple ways of trying to message, knowing that we have multiple different consumers. And maybe one last question was, is there something we didn't ask that you wanted to share with this group on any topic, whether it's a sandwich or a scary animal, whatever?
Well, I just really think we need to be, forward-looking about what the research agenda is, really back to this, knowing now what we don't know. And in particular, I don't think we really know what a skill is. I can't put my hand on one. I can come up with a bunch of names. I don't think we understand the interactivity of skills. I don't think that we've looked back to the question of signaling. I did a presentation for a financial group with a certification, and they were asking themselves whether or not they should still have the BA. And so the real question is, why should you or why shouldn't you? And so what is it that we in the United States deliver with the BA? And we have a very unique model that delivers a combination of general and specific skills that has made, I call it the secret sauce of American economic vitality. No other country really does education the way the U.S. does. And as Tony used to say, if we're so dumb, why are we so rich? And so the productivity associated with our delivery of education is pretty good, and the flexibility in our labor market is very high, and I associate that with general education. So the movement towards skills forward, hiring skills, this and AI, is really missing that underlying foundation that we deliver in our system. And I honestly don't believe that we're going to be able to provide what is needed for a flexible and productive workforce through just having a whole bunch of certifications put together. I don't think it works that way. It's sort of the top of an onion. And for those of you who are interested, DOL, one of their best products is the occupational competency clearinghouse models that really establish that we do have a system of foundational but plus some very specific skills the closer and closer we get to the labor market. So thinking forward, just really back to this in the conversations this group can have, is what are those next questions? What are the real pressing ones? And so in this skills framework, I think if any of those of you who remember Harry Braverman, who was a Marxist economist, really wrote about deconstruction of work and really exposes that, occupations are, they're made up of a bundle of tasks. And so AI, I think, is going to be hitting on those tasks, but it sort of, this is making us rethink about what's in front of us. And so that would be the one thing I'd add in.
How about you, Roy?
Well, what keeps me up at night, and I heard Nick Moore talking about it yesterday, and it scared me to death. Coming out of healthcare, I understand what a mess state licensure is. And it's who has the best lobbyists that gets the scope and determines what it is. I mean, that's the reality, folks. And the lobbyists, the blocking other. I think Workforce Pell is creating another licensing system and not being able to cross borders, and I am scared to death that is what they're creating. And that I think we need to voice concern that, just let the states do what, because we can't control them. I don't think that's the answer. I think we should stand up and have a voice in saying, no, certainly they need state freedom, but there needs to be a framework. When I asked Nick about a framework, and you heard his answer, ain't going to happen. We're not going to give him a framework to work on. I think that is a major problem. And the other one, which I've been trying to get Wall Street Journal to write an article on, I'm very scared of the databases that are looking at credentials of value. I think it is way too weighted toward, does it increase salary, promotion? And I love Wendy and Holly, how you described looking at value of those are the kinds of things. I'm scared to death that the child care workers, the nursing home attendants, the social service people are going to be left out because they'll say, well, you can't even make a living on those credentials. Get rid of them. our infrastructure in our country is going to go down the tubes if we don't start valuing that kind of credential also. And that's about public protection, public health. The certified food protection manager, every restaurant you go into has a certified food protection manager to prevent you from getting sick. Are they high level? Do they get a big salary? They don't get hardly any salary. They're just a food worker, and it's a rotating thing. Every week, thousands rotate out because it isn't a great job. But that's not a credential problem. That is an employer problem, a salary employer problem that we have in this country. And I do think that's another subject at another time, but employers, we have got to be talking more directly to employers and say, hey, you've got to step up to the plate and do better than you have been doing.
So thank you both, and on behalf of everyone and the broader field that everyone's been toiling in for years, just thank you so much for all your contributions. I know you've had other celebrations of your upcoming retirement, more probably not cartoon like this.
Yeah. We didn't have the Colbert question.
No, you didn't have the questionnaire. On the other hand, I know you're getting other kinds of more staid types of presentations, but we really wanted to let you know that we want to learn from you. If there's a way we can continue to learn from you, that would be great. I know we have a little bit of time, and I'm wondering if we are a network here, and if it would be good if some of you want to have whatever questions you have for our stalwarts, that would be great. Well, we're going to get you a mic.
Okay, Tom.
So this is a question. So Roy's point is that we're sort of measuring the private internal rate of return on credentials, right? And we have credentials that have a great social return, but that's not being captured, and that completely skews our thinking about credentials of value. Jeff, what keeps us from giving a better account of the social rate of return of the credentials that people acquire?
Whew, that's a very tough one. I think part of the problem that we have is that wages are too convenient. It's very easy to get to the cents and the hour and the full-time and the blah, blah, blah. And we cannot associate social value to a program or an institution. So we're not really able to do a good job as to the same degree that we are with wages. So wages are overly convenient. So I often say that the act of shining a flashlight on something puts everything else into the shadows, and I think we're at that ebb and flow right now in understanding social value.
Should we work on it?
What's that?
Should we be working on that?
Yes, we should work on this. John Maynard Keynes in 1921, in a thing called the Treatise on Probability, said there are three social science phenomena: those you can measure, those you can rank, and those that you need experts on. And so we can't forget that the expert opinion and the sense of being that people have through work and other pieces are critically important. So for instance, education imbues trust, builds trust. And our economy and our society doesn't work without trust. And a way to understand this is money. You use money because you trust that when somebody gives it to you, you can transfer it to somewhere else. If you look at places with hyperinflation, you'll see what happens when you lose trust in a real central piece of economics. So think about all the other social pieces and how it greases the skids, makes everything work. So yes, we should. I'm not very hopeful of how far we can do it, and we have to avoid the hand-waving problem, and so it's a big challenge, but we shouldn't shy from it.
I think David Trotman at the Texas Higher Commission, he might be a very interesting, because he's starting to think about your question about how Texas can have a kind of another type of database. He would be an interesting person to Kelvin is shaking his head, don't you think? Yeah. He's trying to break out of the box a little bit.
Others of you who have something you want to share?
All right. I love your emphasis on the communication skills, on making it fun, on understanding your audience. Google did a study, Project Aristotle and Project Oxygen, over a period of like 8 years or so, I think 2009 to 2017, where they actually showed the economic value of these human durable skills. Is that type of research something that we can use to shine a light on the dollars that are associated with this? Because Google did it. It's even more important now in the age of AI.
I mean, every time we start using money as the only metric that we can use, all we end up doing is converting everything back to money. And there's so many things that are about social goods of education that I hesitate to associate them with the monetary value. So we can do a whole bunch of things. James Heckman did a lot of work. There's about 5 social values that are causally related with education. You can monetize them: health benefits, incarceration, things like that. But there's so much more: individual prestige, self-awareness, satisfaction. Amartya Sen has done an awful lot of work about I forget the word for it, but self-empowerment, where you are you feel empowered by education, how important it is there. I don't know if we can convert that, right? And so, yes, there's these things that are the glue that weave the skills together. I think that's going to be important. But some of it, we just need to accept, why should we monetize it? And so if we start to look at education is actually a consumption good. So if you look at the drivers on post-secondary tuition, amenities is one of the big drivers. Now we have a necessity on mental health services, but students want the best basketball team. So Tony used to say, let's just talk to the institutions, get rid of the band and get rid of the football team, and you're going to have a revolution. But that's a big driver of cost when you look at the salaries that a coach makes, right? And so, we just need to accept not everything should be monetized.
Apologies, I'm over here in the corner. Thank you both so much. As an up-and-comer, I feel like I've gotten to learn so much from you. My question, we're talking a lot about credentials of value. We're talking about credentials of social good or communal good. What do you think the field's role is in uplifting credentials of harm, or where a student would be worse off for pursuing that credential? And I think this buds into institutional type, cost, so many factors, but I'm curious if you have a perspective.
I mean, we're in an age where information is at our fingertips, and we need to do the best possible job to have good consumer information. But we also need to invest in counseling to help people utilize that information. So my example, I was talking to somebody earlier. My wife's an economist, I'm an economist, we're both data junkies. My son applied to the same schools his friends did, chose the same major that his parents did. So all of this information that we're talking about, all these counseling mechanisms, we're not using the information in a meaningful way. So yes, we should identify things that at this current point are suspect, but we should also use this, and Brian Cook at Urban raised this to me. We need to use it and be willing, forget RCTs. Let's go ahead and contaminate the process. Use the information from an evaluation, dump it into there, and change what's going on through the use of information. So let's not just accept that because a credential is currently leading to a negative ROI, if that's how I'd interpret your term of damage and harm. Let's not assume it's always going to do that. It can simply be a business cycle or an over-enrollment problem. You get up a very high-quality program. So let's use the information and dive a little bit deeper rather than just slash and burn because this year it doesn't make enough money.
Also, there are national standards for a lot of these things, and people don't realize it, but there are major national standards for certifications. There's also an accreditation. But here's the jerk. Only 10 or 15% of the 8,000 certifications are accredited by a third party. And so certainly accreditation, HLC is here, my friend Karen, and they are starting the credential lab idea of trying to help people make choices. But too often it's unknown that there are particular national and international standards. ISO standard, IEEE has a lot of standards, and there are like 246 standard developing organizations in ANSI, and there are 3 standards, one for certification, one for assessment work-based certificate programs and one for competency-based work-based learning programs, national standards that could be looked at to say, well, does that or particular credential meet those particular national standards in this regard? So those are some ways to look at. Certainly asking employers if they see a difference with those who do have the credential versus those who do not have the credential.
So I got the note, we're out of time, so I want to thank you both again for being here and for being stalwarts, literally, for our celebrities. And you're going to stay here, and Kyle's going to come up. I think he's got some sort of an award for you all. So, and I'm gonna leave.
It's a certificate.
Okay. So, you know,
Assessment-based.
Holly and I are both into AI and using AI to generate graphics, clearly. And so I asked Claude, what would an ideal type non-degree credential certificate look like? I asked it what would it have? It said you should have a seal. It said that you should have a title. You should have signatures and everything. So it came up with this certificate in lifetime achievement. We have a little, first time ever, we have a little NCRN seal with a little magnifying glass over a diploma. And a disclaimer, this certificate is an honorary recognition conferred by non-degree credentials research network. It is not based on any form of assessment, examination, or evaluation of competencies. And it carries no legal recognition, professional licensure, or regulatory standing in any jurisdiction. But nonetheless, it does reflect our heartfelt sentiments.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Roy.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, we good either way.
Yeah,
Either
yeah,
hand
yeah.
is good.
But I leave with a note is hearing all this time, one of my favorite quotes of late is, it's very weird when you find yourself the same age as old people.
Yeah.